All right, so let's take a look at some of the most common prompts that you'll see, common app style ones. There tends to be about 5 different types of prompts. Okay, there's like 100 different ways they can word the prompt, but they tend to fall in the same basic categories. I want to show you what some of those are. The first, one of the most common types you'll see is tell us about a problem you faced and how you overcame it. Another common one is, when did you first realize you were interested academically? Or a much more vague prompt like, who are you? Less common, but a little scary. You're like, what do you mean, who am I? Let's talk about how you can overcome the chronological example where you're a flat and dynamic character. Let's first start with this one. This one's easy to sort of conceptualize here. Tell us about a problem you faced and how you overcame it. If you're not careful, you're going to talk about the problem and how you overcame it, and you're going to end up with a flat line. Still more dynamic than the laundry list, but it's not perfect yet. Let's instead envision this sort of two-dimensionally. Ben, version 1, the problem, and Ben, version 2. What this would look like is basically a character arc. Okay? This symbolizes the change in my inner workings. So I'm going to first define who I was before the problem. Then I'm going to show and discuss the problem. And then I'm going to talk about how I'm different now as the result of overcoming it. How am I new and improved and better? How am I closer to the ideal Ben after having gone over that hurdle? So there's your essay format. This is part 1 or paragraph 1. This is part 2 or paragraph 2. This is part 3 or paragraph 3. These don't have to be paragraphs, but they can be depending on how much length you have. What's your total word count? So if you have 300 words, you can simply do 100, 100, 100, but more than likely something like 50, 150, 100. You can adapt it from there. What about this next one? When did you first realize you were interested in academically? You can still do this method, B1. Instead of a problem, now we have a light bulb moment, an epiphany. And we can still do the same arc. So when did you first realize you were interested academically? Or another way of saying this is, if you're declaring a major, tell us when you first decided that academic major was an interest of yours. You'd first talk about what you were before you made this realization. What kind of person were you? What was the moment or series of moments? What were the series of realizations that you had that this particular major was for you, or that academics were for you? And then talk about who you are now after having made this epiphany, and you get this arc again. And again, depending on how many words you have, divvy up how many words for each of these that you want. But first establish who you were before, establish who you were afterwards, and then talk about the arc that occurred in you, the change in your inner spirit that makes you not a flat character anymore. Lastly, who are you? These prompts like this are vague and they're very scary sounding. They don't seem like they're giving you much to work on, but I'll show you still can come up with this arc this way. Who are you, right? Well, there was a point at which you knew less about yourself than version 1. There was something there. Maybe you realized that you were good talking with people, or about caring about people. You always know that about yourself. You're a people person. You're interpersonal. You're extroverted. You know that. So when was it that you first realized that? Was there a moment in grade school? Was there a moment in high school? Was there something that you did that made you feel particularly joyous about being an extroverted person? That would be your epiphany moment, the light bulb moment. And then you talk about the secondary version. So this is you before you realize this about yourself fully or completely. This is a particularly useful anecdote or story about something that really drew this to your attention in a profound way. And this is you as a more improved person. And you can also hint at how you're getting closer to your ideal self. And you could also tie in, well, your school can help me reach my ideal self of whatever version that might be. So again, we have all of these basic prompts that are very popular that you can then wedge into this ARC format, which is going to get you in the top half. Because remember, we're competing here. I told you about how most essays tend to clump down here because they're static and flat. Now we're up here. I'll make a brief word about how to even accentuate from there to pop you up into the top 10% if you're really going for a competitive school. I'll do that briefly, but let me know in person if you have more details about how to really go for a grand slam, okay? So here's our intermediate / advanced dynamic character arc. One way to make this pop even more is to tinker with it and take a risk. One of the things to do is this would be, let's say this is Ben version 1. This is when I realized I really like playing with Legos. I had an aha moment when I was playing with Legos as a child that I really like constructing my own things. Here's my light bulb moment. And then this was the first of many realizations that got me thinking about constructing my own things and declaring an engineering major. Okay, you can do better than this, but I'm just giving you an example, something very simple and easy to follow. You can come up with a better epiphany than that one. But here you have this basic arc line. You'd establish who you were, the epiphany, and how this epiphany helped you march towards your ideal self of being an engineer that's going to save the world, yada, yada. One thing that you can do to make this pop is tinker with the chronology, and movies do this too to become interesting. There's one type called an in media res intro, and it's Latin for in the middle of the action. And so what you do is you'd start right here in this action scene of playing with Legos, and so you don't have, you can skip out the boring parts. It's sort of like in essence, it's sort of an attention getter. You start with the action, you start with this epiphany moment. And what you'll find is that no matter what arc you create, in whatever prompt that you have, here is the moment. Here's where we can actually tell a story. Instead of the background information over here and the resolution over here, this is the actionable moment. So you start right there with that. And then it's you'll have to tinker with it. But by starting with the action, then you're going to have to put B1 and B2 at the end. So it still shows the arc, but you're just doing it out of order. That's one of many ways that you can do it. And it's, I think, one of the most effective. Because you can also, instead of doing character arcs or in media res, you can also endear yourself to the reader by being funny, for example. You can be just funny, but not everyone can achieve humor. Not everyone has that as a gift, but all of you have the ability to do an arc like this, or better yet, do an arc with an epiphany, do it out of order, and be humorous about it. And that would be example of one way of hitting a grand slam. So anyway, I hope that this helps and gives you some ideas to think about. Good luck, and let me know if you need anything.